Welcome back. In this episode we're going to reinstall our freshly serviced Hitachi compressor and see if that solves our air suspension problem. Bit of a spoiler, it doesn't. But what it does do is allow us to find and detect a leak in our air reservoir tank. So we're going to whip that out next and replace that with a brand new one and see if that sorts our air suspension problem. We're hopeful. Right at the end of this video I will give you a full breakdown of the costs and the time taken to do this repair and some other mutterings of wisdom. So stick with me and thanks for watching. Right, before we reinstall and fire up the refurbished compressor, it's a good idea to change the relay, which is in the boot behind this panel. And this little diagram tells you which one it is, which in real life translates to that relay there. So let's pop that out, wiggle it out. There's probably no signs of failure on it, but OEM parts less than a tenner. Let's stick one in. Okay, in there we go. New relay in. Let's reinstall the compressor, fire it up. Go back in and bolt it down with the 4 bolts on each corner. Connect that. Push in the air line with the pushing collet that connects the air dryer and the reservoir block. Slide the reservoir block back into its bracket. Connect up the power. Click. Make sure I've connected everything that needs to be connected. And it's almost time for the moment of truth. Live test coming up. So we've run a couple of tests now. We've reinstalled the service compressor and it's mixed news. We've still got a suspension fault, but we've made progress. The compressor is now much happier, and whereas before it was giving us about 33 psi in the gallery, we're now up to 120, and the temperature, which was stuck in the low 20s before, is now getting up to 120 odd before the compressor cuts out. The temperature sensor is located just by the piston bore housing, so we know the compressor's now much happier, but we've still got a problem. Now I've been over the compressor with a fine-tooth comb and there's no leaks there. I can check the line from the compressor as it goes through the back of the wheel well into the space under the car, which then sits under a plastic cover before the reservoir line goes into a Voss connector at the back of the reservoir. I can't actually access that because it's out of sight. Now looking at the figures from the GAP Diagnostics tool, I'm pretty sure that the reservoir valve block is okay, I think, and the front and rear valves are okay that go to the air springs. So I think we've got a leak either in the line that I can't see to the reservoir or the reservoir itself. The job of the reservoir is to deliver pressurized air quickly to the air springs to adjust the ride height, and so if we've got a leak, that would explain why our gallery pressure is starting off very low It is increasing, but it's not maintaining. I would expect our gallery pressure when we fire it up to be much higher than that. I think the nominal value of the reservoir is about 210 psi, and we're nowhere near that. So it's time to get back onto the car with the bubbles and see if we can find a leak. We're then going to have to take the cover off if we can't and check the FOS connector, but we are getting there. But as with all these things, you fix one and then you move on to the next potential problem, which is where we're at now. So onwards and upwards, and let's see what we can do. If you've ever wondered what an air reservoir tank looks like that's been sat under a car for 15 years and done 204,000 miles, this is it. Crusty and rusty. So here we are once again, lying on our back under the car, spraying liberal amounts of soapy water on the air reservoir, trying to identify if there's a leak. We worked all the way from the back to the front, no sign of a leak. And here we are on the last bit, right at the front, and wait for it. You see that? Right there where my finger is, I can feel air escaping, and there's a bubble. Gotcha. We've had another delivery. New air reservoir tank has arrived. It's an original Land Rover part, as we don't want to be messing around with cheap fakes when we come to a pressurised vessel system on our suspension. And it was actually a very good price. Well, I consider it a very good price. And if you want to know the price of this as well as the rest of the repair, I'll do you a breakdown right at the end of the video. It's not heavy, it's about 5 or 6 kilograms, so it's not going to be difficult to install. 2 pairs of hands will make it a lot easier. And now we've just got to get the bugger in. Let's crack on with it. So today, with the new reservoir tucked safely in the boot, we're heading off to a friendly local neighbourhood independent garage. Well, when I say local, living out here, there's not a lot that's local. It's a relative term. It's about a 15-minute drive. And of course, it's raining on the day that we want to fit the reservoir. And although I could do this by manhandling it and jacking the car up and getting underneath, I don't have a nice dry bright garage to do it in, just a nice wet concrete floor on my drive. So we're going to use some of our considerable savings of cash that we've got to this point and be happy to hand it over for the use of the garage's ramp. It'll be much easier to get the air reservoir off while this is up in the air, and it should take a lot less time, so I don't begrudge them a penny of it. So let's go and have a go at that. And while we're using the GAP Diagnostics tool to deflate the air reservoir, and we're only deflating the air reservoir, we don't need to deflate the entire system. We can do this from the comfort of standing outside the car because it's Bluetooth connected to my phone. We're having a poke around underneath, looking at the bolts we've got to remove from this cover. There's quite a few of them, and some of them look a little bit rusty, but not too bad. We've got to remove them from the heat shield and bend the heat shield back, then remove the rest of them and drop the cover down, and that'll then expose the pipes that are leaving the spare wheel well, the old air reservoir out. See the brackets where the 4 bolts connect it, and having a look down here, that there is where we identified the leak. That little pinhole just there. So we're reusing the old connector and pipe and have just swapped the O-ring from the new valve over to the old valve and reinstalled it into the air reservoir, which we're now going to bolt back up with the 4 bolts. That's the new air reservoir installed, bolted back into place. Re-enable the EAS system with the GAP tool. There we go, less than an hour on the ramp. Old crusty brown air reservoir removed. Didn't put up much of a fight, well, apart from 1 bolt, but that wasn't much of a fight. New shiny black air reservoir installed. EAS suspension re-enabled with the GAP tool, and instantly it's happy. No bing bong, no suspension fault, goes up and down. So I'm pretty sure we can declare this one fixed. Just want to do a couple more miles first, make sure we get no bing bong, and then we're home. Run it through the GAP Diagnostics tool and make sure the gallery pressure and everything's as it should be, and then it's time to sit down with a nice hot cup of coffee and reflect on what we've learnt from this little repair job. See you shortly. Oh dear, snow stopped play. Seems an opportune moment to give you an update. Well, the good news is we've fixed the suspension fault. The big questions are, how much did it cost us and how long did it take? So let's deal with the cost first of all. We spent £70 on a compressor service kit, £10 on a relay, £10 on some silicone and some grease. We bought a new reservoir, which was £165, and we gave our local garage 45 crisp notes for the use of their ramp, spare pair of hands and some tools. So all in, we're at about £300. Now, how does that compare to getting it fixed at the local dealership? Well, I know, because I gave them a call. Sorry? You want how much? Are you insane? I'm not paying that. Explained what the issues were, and they've said for a new compressor, because obviously they're not going to service a compressor, it's a new compressor straight in, plus the reservoir valve block, which they're insistent needs replaced at the same time due to the age of the system, plus a new air reservoir tank, plus diagnostics, labour and test, was nearly 1900 quid. 1900 quid. And we all know that if you use dealerships, they'd have found a few other things, broke a few other things. So if I'd have got any change out of £2,000, I'd have considered myself lucky. So when we consider we've spent 300 quid and they wanted to charge us £2,000, that's a pretty decent saving. Now, of course, we could take it to a local garage, but they still would want to put in a compressor, which is about £480, a Hitachi compressor. Not none of the cheap knockoff fake things that you can get on eBay, which have never been anywhere near Hitachi, but look the same, which were about 160 quid. Their labour costs would have been less. However, we'd have still been looking at about £1,500 by my calculation. So by doing this repair ourselves, we've saved a substantial wedge of cash, which is a good thing. In terms of time, I spent about 4 hours servicing the compressor. I spent about 2 hours investigating and diagnosing the issues, and I spent less than an hour putting the new air reservoir in. So it's not a bad job really, although I did do it over several days because I had to wait for parts to arrive, so bear that in mind. Is it a job I'd recommend you can do yourself? Yes. It does help having a diagnostics tool, and I do have the GAP Diagnostics tool, and it speeds things up, but it's not essential. However, considering how much money we've just saved by doing that, the GAP Diagnostic tool is about 450 quid. So you're still, on this one job, paid for everything and got yourself a diagnostics tool as well. So it's a pretty good result. In terms of the GAP results, when we fixed it, I'll pop that up there now, and you can see that when we put the ignition on, we've got around about 210 psi gallery pressure. We then activate the EAS and raise the vehicle, and you can see that the gallery pressure drops and the vehicle lifts quickly. So it's using the stored air in the air reservoir to raise the vehicle, and then the compressor then replenishes the air in the air reservoir through the magic that goes on in the air reservoir valve, and leaves us with about 225 psi ready for the next time that we need to call on it to change the air suspension height. So all is good. So we'll chalk this one up as fixed. Hope you found something of use, and thanks for watching. Not long till the next full. We've got 2 Range Rovers on the drive, so you never have to wait too long for something to go wrong. So see you in the next one. Thanks again.